What if two of Ninjago's greatest figures were more than just a wise mentor and a fallen warlord? What if Master Wu and Lord Garmadon are actually the mortal instruments of an ancient power, avatars of the Source Dragon of Balance? Today, we'll dive deep into Ninjago lore, old and new, to explore this fan theory. We'll sift through evidence from Dragon's Rising, especially Season 3, and classic seasons, connecting dots between the first Spinjitzu Master, the balance of creation and destruction, and mysterious Source Dragons. By the end, we'll see how Wu's ghostly form in Dragon's Rising and the Great Merge itself might all tie back to the fate of the Balance Dragon. Of course, this is speculative, a lore-driven theory, not official canon. But the fun of Ninjago is how rich its mythology is. So let's respectfully analyze the lore and see if Wu and Garmadon's lives were predestined by forces greater than any of us imagined. Buckle up for a deep dive into Ninjago's history, where creation and destruction must remain in balance, and where two brothers may carry the legacy of an ancient dragon. Let's begin. From the very beginning of Ninjago's story, balance has been a central theme. The first Spinjitzu Master, the legendary creator of the realm, himself embodied balance. Born of both the Oni and the dragons, he was literally the child of light and darkness, inheriting the power of creation from his dragon lineage and the power of destruction from his Oni lineage. This dual heritage made the FSM a being of balance between two primal forces. Picture the first realm, the primordial world of the Oni and dragons. The dragons wielded the power to create, while the Oni wielded the power to destroy. These two forces were in eternal conflict, creation versus destruction, light versus darkness, until the first Spinjitzu Master was born, uniting both sides within himself. Seeking an end to the endless war, the FSM left that realm to create a new one, the realm of Ninjago, a land that he hoped would be at peace. But Ninjago itself could not escape the need for balance. As Misako famously explained to the ninja in Season 2, in order for there to be light, there must be shadow, and within shadow there is darkness, the blackest of darkness, an evil spirit called the Overlord. From the moment the FSM brought light into the world, a shadow rose to meet it. The Overlord, a being of pure evil and darkness, emerged as the natural counterweight to the FSM's light shortly after Ninjago's creation. Good and evil had to coexist, a cosmic scale that could tip but never be broken. The first Spinjitzu Master and the Overlord clashed in an epic battle for Ninjago's fate. Neither could outright defeat the other because they represented opposite poles of a cosmic balance. In fact, their war literally shaped the geography of Ninjago. Realizing he could not destroy the Overlord without upsetting the balance, the FSM instead used his power of creation to split Ninjago into two equal halves, the main island and the dark island. This act balanced the forces of light and darkness, trapping the Overlord's darkness on the dark island and stripping the Dark Lord of a physical form. Ninjago had light and dark held apart but in equilibrium. The message was clear. Neither side could completely eliminate the other without dire consequences. Over the centuries, the cycle of balance continued. The Overlord, though trapped, never truly died. He lingered as a spirit, plotting his return since the very beginning. Why? Because, as one account puts it, the balance must be maintained. Even when the Overlord was defeated in later battles, some part of him survived. This is an explicit rule in Ninjago lore. If one side of the balance, light or dark, becomes too dominant or is seemingly destroyed, the universe finds a way to preserve or restore balance. When Zane sacrificed himself to destroy the Overlord's physical form at the end of Rebooted, Season 3, the Overlord's essence endured specifically because total victory of light over dark was not allowed by destiny. Light cannot permanently vanquish darkness, and vice versa, without unraveling the fundamental equilibrium of the world. This yin-yang dynamic also played out in the prophecies of Ninjago. The Green Ninja prophecy foretold a final battle between the brightest light and the darkest dark. Indeed, in Season 2, Legacy of the Green Ninja, we saw Lloyd face the Overlord in a confrontation that had been destined for ages. Lloyd's triumph as the ultimate Spinjitzu Master used the power of creation to extinguish the Overlord's darkness. But even that victory was temporary in the grand scheme, as darkness would eventually find a way back. The point is that creation and destruction, good and evil, keep cycling, each rise giving birth to a counter-rise. Ninjago's history is essentially the story of balance being tested but ultimately restored. To truly appreciate the balanced dragon theory, we need to recall one more core piece of lore, the story of the two brothers, Wu and Garmadon, and how they mirrored the dichotomy of their father. The first Spinjitzu Master passed down two legacies through his sons, one of light and one of shadow. While both brothers are descendants of Oni and Dragon, fate took them down divergent paths. Master Wu followed his father's path of wisdom, creation, and protection, whereas Garmadon succumbed to darkness and destruction, albeit not entirely of his own choosing. In Season 1, we learn that young Garmadon was bitten by the Great Devourer, a serpent whose venom turned his heart evil, setting him on the road to becoming Lord Garmadon. What's especially intriguing is that this tragic event was no accident. It was later revealed revealed that the Overlord planned the Devourer's bite, manipulating events so that Garmadon would be corrupted. The Overlord, the embodiment of destruction, essentially ensured that one of the FSM sons would embrace darkness, thereby fulfilling the needed balance, a champion of light and a champion of dark. The Devourer's bite was an event planned by the Overlord where Garmadon was bitten, which turned him evil. In other words, the ultimate evil literally had a hand in crafting his future pawn, nudging destiny so that the familial balance of Wu, light, and Garmadon, dark, would come to pass. In the lore, the first Spinjitzu master used to tell young Wu and Garmadon campfire stories of the Overlord, perhaps warning them of the lurking darkness. Little did they know, the Overlord had already set Garmadon's corruption in motion. By ensuring Garmadon carried the Oni's destructive influence, the cosmos, through the Overlord's machinations, maintained the cosmic yin-yang, one brother steeped in light, the other in shadow. Wu and Garmadon essentially became living embodiments of the balance their father embodied, just split into two individuals. Throughout the classic seasons, we repeatedly see the theme of balance manifested through Wu and Garmadon's relationship. When Garmadon leaned fully into evil, Wu and the ninja would rise to counter him. When Garmadon was purified of evil, like at the end of Season 2, when he briefly became good Garmadon, a new darkness emerged, the Overlord's return, to fill that void, almost as if the universe couldn't allow Garmadon's darkness to simply vanish. And later, when Garmadon was resurrected in Season 8, sons of Garmadon as a being of pure evil, Oni without humanity, Lloyd had to unlock a deeper power of light to oppose him. Every action had an equal and opposite reaction in the grand narrative. The pinnacle of this theme was arguably Season 10, March of the Oni. The Oni invaded Ninjago, threatening to cover it in darkness. In the final hour, it took Wu, Garmadon, and all the ninja together to perform the fabled Tornado of Creation, an ultimate act of creation, to push back the darkness. This was a beautiful symbolic moment. Creation united with even Garmadon's darkness to restore balance. The fact that Garmadon joined his brother and the ninja in that tornado underscored that both sides were needed to save the world. They literally spun creation and destruction together into a balancing force. The Oni were vanquished by this harmony of opposites. As the story ended, Garmadon, having served his role, leaves to wander, and Wu resumes guiding the next generation. The balance, for the moment, was set right. The Tornado of Creation is performed for the first time since Day of the Great Devourer. It is used to defeat the Oni. This climactic act from Season 10 visually and thematically represents what this theory is all about. Balance. Creation alone couldn't win, destruction alone couldn't either. It took unity. As Wu said in the March of the Oni trailer, endings will always come. All we can do is fight to make them good ones. This was the voice of someone who understands the inevitability of the cosmic cycle, a cycle he and his brother have been a part of since birth. So, with all that in mind, the constant interplay of light and dark in Ninjago, we return to our central question. Are Master Wu and Lord Garmadon literally avatars of the Source Dragon of Balance? To answer that, we need to understand what the Source Dragons are in Ninjago's expanded lore, and how mortal avatars function in this universe. For that, we turn to Ninjago, Dragons Rising. In the new Dragons Rising series, Ninjago's mythology expanded dramatically with the introduction of the Source Dragons, 7 primordial dragons of godlike power who each embody a fundamental concept or element of the universe. These include the Source Dragons of energy, motion, strength, life, flow, focus, and importantly for our theory, balance. They are essentially the cosmic maintainers of reality's various aspects. The Source Dragons exist beyond normal time, space, and dimension, and they work together, usually, to keep the fabric of the realms stable. Source Dragon of Energy, tied to lightning, heat, light, and so on. Source Dragon of Motion, tied to movement elements like fire, speed, sound, etc. Source Dragon of Life, tied to nature, growth, etc. Source Dragon of Focus, tied to ice, mind, technology, etc. Source Dragon of Strength, tied to earth and fortitude. Source Dragon of Flow, tied to water, time, wind, etc. Source Dragon of Balance, tied to balance itself, as well as sub-elements like shadow and amber. Uniquely, the Balance Dragon isn't associated with one of the original ninja's elements. It stands for the equilibrium of all things. Now, these Source Dragons are immensely powerful, comparable to Greek gods in terms of power, but they usually operate on a higher plane of existence. However, they can take on mortal forms, and when they do, they become vulnerable. In fact, a Source Dragon can only be killed in its mortal form. Why would they ever take mortal form? Sometimes it's by choice, other times by compulsion or necessity, and sometimes, rather than manifesting directly, a Source Dragon can act through a mortal avatar. So, what is a mortal avatar in Ninjago? The term might be new to some fans, but Dragons Rising gives us a perfect example, the Arc Dragon of Focus. According to lore, a mortal avatar is a being chosen by a god to serve as their emissary or vessel in the mortal world. In other words, it's like a representative or champion imbued with a fragment of the god's power, acting on their behalf among among mortals. The Archdragon of Focus is explicitly described as a two-headed Archdragon, revered as the champion of the Source Dragons, a mortal avatar of the Source Dragon of Focus. It carries the power of focus, but it isn't the Source Dragon itself. It's an appointed proxy. In Dragons Rising Season 3, the story goes that when a great threat emerged, the dragon Thunderfang, who embodied chaos, the Council of Source Dragons released the Archdragon of Focus as the mortal avatar of the Source Dragon of Focus to confront that threat. The Archdragon could be summoned and even commanded by those who knew how, acting as a kind of bridge between the mortal heroes and the divine Source Dragon powers. This is a huge deal. It shows the Source Dragons can and do empower lesser beings to act in their stead. And the Archdragon of Focus's story has some very interesting details that will later mirror Wu and Garmadon's situation. After fulfilling its mission by defeating Thunderfang once, the Archdragon of Focus split into two halves and fell into a deep slumber in two different realms. One half slept in the realm of Mysterium and the other in the realm of Ninjago. When one of those realms, Ninjago, was destroyed in a later cataclysm, the corresponding half of the Archdragon died along with it. Yes, even an avatar can die if its physical form perishes. The heroes later had to reunite the two halves of the Archdragon in order to summon it again and fully restore its power. This required a ritual involving something called the Prismatic Blades and an unbidden storm to merge the halves back into the one Archdragon of Focus. Notably, at one point Nia mistook an image of the two-headed Archdragon for the actual Source Dragon of Focus, and a character named Blecht corrected her, explaining that it was just the avatar. This confusion tells us that an avatar can appear nearly as majestic or significant as a Source Dragon, but they are distinct. Blecht also warned that summoning an avatar without the Source Dragon's permission could anger the Source Dragons, implying the avatars are normally under the purview of their Source Dragon and not meant to be used lightly by mortals. The case of the Archdragon of Focus sets a precedent in the lore. Godlike dragons have mortal avatars, and those avatars can even be split into two entities that function as one when united. Keep that concept in mind because it might sound familiar when we think about Wu and Garmadon. Two halves of one whole, perhaps. So, if the Source Dragon of Focus had a two-headed dragon avatar in the mortal world, what about the Source Dragon of Balance? If any Source Dragon would be likely to use an avatar, or avatars, to maintain equilibrium in the mortal world, Balance would be the one. After all, its very role was to help maintain balance across the realms. Perhaps it also chose champions or vessels in Ninjago to carry out that mission. Before we jump to Wu and Garmadon directly, let's outline exactly what happened to the Source Dragon of Balance in the Dragons Rising storyline, because it's central to this theory. In the modern Ninjago era, post-Season 15 and into Dragons Rising, something earth-shattering occurred. The Merge, a cataclysmic event where all the realms fused into one. We eventually learned that the Merge was intimately tied to the fate of the Source Dragon of Balance. Let's recount that sequence. Long ago, the first Spinjitzu master foresaw the Merge coming. To prevent this disaster of realms colliding, he sought help from the Source Dragons. The FSM convinced them to imbue him with some of their energy, which he forged into Dragon Cores, artifacts created specifically to keep the realms separate and in balance, averting the Merge. The Source Dragon of Balance cast the deciding vote to help the FSM in this plan, so Balance was literally the linchpin in preventing a multiversal catastrophe thousands of years ago. Fast forward to recent times, shortly before Dragons Rising, the Source Dragon of Balance was killed, but crucially, this happened while it was in mortal form. How or by whom it was killed remains a bit of a mystery, perhaps in some conflict we haven't fully seen, or as a consequence of something the Imperium faction did. But we know this much. Once the Balance Dragon died, its body didn't vanish, as an immortal symbolic form would. Instead, its corpse remained, buried in the desert of Imperium. The death of such a major cosmic entity sent shockwaves, quite literally, through reality. With Balance gone, the equilibrium of the realms started to fail. The show portrays this as mergequakes, reality tremors as the boundaries between realms weakened. It's implied that the loss of the Balance Dragon's guiding presence was a key factor that allowed the Merge to initiate. In fact, one popular theory, shared by characters in the show and fans alike, is that the Balance Dragon's job had been to keep the realms from merging, keeping them in balance with each other. When he died, the Merge happened. This aligns perfectly with what we see. Immediately after Balance's death, all hell breaks loose in the cosmology. But there's more. The still sentient remains of the Balance Dragon actually called out to one of our heroes, Cole, the Earthmaster. In Dragons Rising Season 3, Cole starts experiencing something dubbed the Earth Screaming. This was the Balance Dragon's spirit, or lingering energy, reaching out through the Earth element. Interesting, since Earth is often associated with stability trying to get attention. Cole hears this as literal screams from the land. The dragon was effectively warning him that time was running out as the Merge neared. Master Wu, ever the wise guide, somehow knew or sensed what was happening. He led Cole to the site where the Balance Dragon's bones lay buried. In the episode The Screaming Earth, Wu, or rather Wu's apparition, more on that in a second, II guides the ninja to dig in a specific spot. Cole, along with a new Earthmaster named Frack, use their elemental powers to unearth the colossal skeleton of the fallen Balance Dragon. They literally raise the bones of a god from the ground. It's a haunting and awe-inspiring scene. To imagine these ninjas standing before the remains of a dragon that once embodied balance itself. The moment the skeleton is fully uncovered, it disappears. Possibly, the energy finally dissipates, or it shifts into the ethereal, but the physical bones vanish. And at that very moment, Wu's specter appears before the ninja. He speaks to them cryptically. The skeleton was lost, but now it can be found. This line suggests that now that the ninja have acknowledged and revealed the fallen Balance Dragon, its presence can be found or felt, perhaps by the remaining source dragons or by those attuned to it. Wu's ghostly form then presumably fades after delivering this message. If you liked this video, subscribe for part 2.